Hello guys, it's Cassidy again, and today we're going to read part 2 of Cinder by Marissa Meyer. Chapter 3. You're going to the ball. Ego tapped her grippers together in an imitation of clapping. We have to find you a dress and shoes. I will not allow you to wear those awful boots. We'll get some new gloves and… Could you bring that light over here? Cinder said, yanking out the top drawer of her standing toolbox. She rifled through it, spare bolts and sockets jingling as Ego scooted closer. A wash of bluish light dispersed the dimness of the storage room. Think of the food they'll have, said Ego, and the dresses, and the music. Cinder ignored her, selecting an assortment of varying tools and arranging them on Ego's magnetic torso. Oh, my stars, think about Prince Kai. You could dance with Prince Kai. That made Cinder pause and squint into Ego's blinding light. Why would the prince dance with me? Ego's fan hummed as she sought an answer. Because you won't have grease on your face this time. Cinder fought down a chuckle. Android reasoning could be so simplistic. I hate to break this to you, Ego, she said, slamming in the drawer and moving on to the next, but I'm not going to the ball. Ego's fan stopped momentarily, started up again. I don't compute. For starters, I just spent my life savings on a new foot. But even if I did have money, why would I spend it on a dress or gloves or shoes? What a waste. What else could you have spent it on? A complete set of wrenches, a toolbox with drawers that don't stick. She slammed in the second drawer with her shoulder to emphasize her point. A down payment on my own apartment where I won't have to be Adri's servant anymore. Adri wouldn't sign the release documents. Cinder opened the third drawer. I know. It would cost a lot more than a silly dress anyway. She grabbed a ratchet and a handful of wrenches and sat them on top of the toolbox. Maybe I'd get skin grafting. Your skin is fine. Cinder glanced at Ego from the corner of her eye. Oh, you mean your cyborg parts. Shutting the third drawer, Cinder grabbed her messenger bag from the work desk and shoved the tools inside of it. What else do you think we'll… Oh, the floor jack. Where did I put that? You're being unreasonable, said Ego. Maybe you can trade for a dress or get one on consignment. I've been dying to go to that vintage dress store on Sakura. You know the one I mean? Cinder shuffled around the random tools that had collected beneath the work table. It doesn't matter. I'm not going. But it does matter. It's the ball and the prince. Ego, fixing an android for him. I'm fixing an android for him. It's not like we're friends now. Mentioning the prince's android sparked a memory, and a moment later Cinder pulled the floor jack out from behind its tread. And it doesn't matter because Adri will never let me go. She said if you fixed the hover. Right. And after I fix the hover, what about Peony's port screen that's always acting up? What about… She scanned the room and spotted a rusty android tucked in the corner. What about that old Guard 7.3? What would Adri want with that old thing? She doesn't have a garden anymore. She doesn't even have a balcony. I'm just saying she has no real intention of letting me go. As long as she can come up with things for me to fix, my chores will never be done. Cinder shoved a couple jack stands into her bag, telling herself that she didn't care. Not really. She wouldn't fit into a formal ball anyway. Even if she did find dress, gloves, and slippers that could hide her metal monstrosities, her mousy hair would never hold a curl, and she didn't know the first thing about makeup. She would just end up sitting off the dance floor making fun of the girls who swooned to get Prince Kai's attention, pretending she wasn't jealous, pretending it didn't bother her. Although she was curious about the food. And the prince did know her now, sort of. He had been kind to her at the market. Perhaps he would ask her to dance, out of politeness, out of chivalry when he saw her standing alone. The precarious fantasy crashed down around her as quickly as it had begun. It was impossible. Not worth thinking about. She was cyborg, and she would never go to the ball. I think that's everything, she said, masking her disappointment by adjusting the messenger bag over her shoulders. You ready? I don't compute, said Ego. If fixing the hover won't convince Adri to let you go to the ball, then why are we going to the junkyard? If she wants a mag belt so bad, why doesn't she dig through the trash to find one? Because ball or not, I do believe she would sell you off for pocket change if given a reason. Besides, with them off to the ball, we'll have the apartment to ourselves. Doesn't that sound nice? It sounds great to me. Cinder turned to see Peony heaving herself through the doorway. She still wore her silver ball gown, but now the hems alongside the neck and sleeves were finished. A hint of lace had been added to her cleavage, accentuating the fact that, at 14, Peony had already developed curves that Cinder couldn't begin to hope for. If Cinder's body had ever been predisposed to femininity, it had been ruined by whatever the surgeons had done to her, leaving her with a stick-straight figure. Too angular, too boyish, too awkward with her heavy artificial life. I'm going to strangle Mom, said Puny. She's making me loony. Pearl needs to find a husband. My daughters are such a drain. No one appreciates what I do for them. Yap, yap, yap. She wobbled her fingers in the air in mockery of her mother. What are you doing down here? Hiding. Oh, and to ask you if you could look at my port screen. She pulled a handheld screen from behind her back, offering it to Cinder. Cinder took it, but her eyes were on the bottom of Puny's skirt, watching as the shimmering hem gathered dust bunnies around it. You're going to ruin that dress. Then Adrian will really be a tyrant. Puny stuck out her tongue, but then gathered up her skirt in both fists, hiking the hem to her knees. So what do you think? She said, bouncing off the balls of her bare feet. You look amazing. Puny preened, wrinkling the fabric more on her fingers. But then her cheeriness faltered. She should have made one for you too. It's not fair. I don't really want to go. Cinder shrugged. Puny's tone had such sympathy that she didn't bother to argue. She was usually able to ignore the jealousy she had toward her stepsisters, how Adri doted on them, how soft their hands were, especially when Puny was the only human friend she had. But she couldn't swallow the twitch of envy at seeing Puny in that dress. She brushed the topic away. What's wrong with the port? It's doing that gibberish thing again. Puny pushed some tools off a stack of empty paint bins, choosing the cleanest spot before sitting down, her full skirts flouncing around her. She swung her feet so that her heels beat steadily against the plastic. Have you been downloading those stupid celebrity apps again? No. Cinder raised an eyebrow. One language app, that's it. And I needed it for class. Oh, before I forget, Eco, I brought you something. Eco rolled to Puny's side as she pulled a velvet ribbon from her bodice, leftover trim from the seamstress. The light in the room brightened when Eco saw it. Thank you, said the android as Puny tied the ribbon around her skinny wrist joint. It's lovely. Cinder set the port screen on the work desk next to Prince Kai's android. I'll look at it tomorrow. We're off to find a mag belt for Her Majesty. Oh, where are you going? The junkyard. It's going to be a bundle of fun, said Eco, scanning the makeshift bracelet with her sensor again and again. Really? Said Puny. Can I come? Cinder laughed. She's kidding. Eco's been practicing her sarcasm. I don't care. Anything's better than going back to that stuffy apartment. Puny fanned herself and absently leaned against a stack of metal shelving. Reaching out, Cinder pulled her skirt back. Careful, your dress. Puny surveyed her skirt, then the grime-covered shelves, then waved Cinder's concern away. Really, can I? Sounds exciting. It sounds dirty and stinky, said Eco. How would you know? Said Cinder. You don't have scent receptors. I have a fantastic imagination. Smirking, Cinder half shoved her stepsister toward the door. Fine, go get changed, but be quick. I have a story to tell you. Chapter 4. Puny slugged Cinder in the shoulder, nearly pushing her into a pile of bald android trees. How could you wait for so long to tell me? You've only been home for what, 4 hours? I know, I'm sorry, said Cinder, rubbing her shoulder. There wasn't a good time, and I didn't want Adri to know. I don't want her taking advantage of it. Who cares what Mom thinks? I want to take advantage of this. Good stars, the prince, in your booth. I can't believe I wasn't there. Why wasn't I there? You were busy being fitted in silk and brocade. Ugh. Puny kicked a broken headlight out of her path. You should have calmed me. I would have been there in 2 seconds, unfinished ball gown and all. Ugh, I hate you. It's official, I hate you. Are you going to see him again? I mean, you have to, right? I might be able to stop hating you if you promise to bring me with you. Alright? Found one. Eco called out from 10 yards ahead. Her floodlight targeted the body of a rested hover, entrenching the piles of debris behind it in shadows. So, what was he like? Puny said, keeping pace as Cinder hurried toward the earthbound vehicle, as if being near her was now on par with being near the prince himself. I don't know, said Cinder, unlatching the vehicle's hood and lifting it up on the prop rod. Oh, good, it hasn't been scavenged. Eco scooted out of Cinder's way. He was polite enough not to point out the giant grease stain on her forehead. Puny gasped. Oh, you didn't. What? I'm a mechanic. I get dirty. If you wanted me to get all gussied up, you should have calmed ahead. Eco, I could use some light in here. Eco tilted her head forward, illuminating the engine compartment. On Cinder's other side, Peony clucked her tongue. Maybe he thought it was a mole? That makes me feel much better. Cinder pulled a pair of pliers from her bag. The night sky was clear, and though the lights from the city blocked out any stars, the sharp crescent moon lurked near the horizon, a sleepy eye squinting through the haze. Is he as handsome in real life as he looks on the net screens? Yes, said Eco, even more handsome, and awfully tall. Everyone's tall to you. Peony leaned against the front bumper, arms folded, and I want to hear Cinder's opinion. Cinder stopped poking the pliers around the engine as the memory of his easy smile rushed into her. Though Prince Kai had long been one of Peony's favorite topics, she was probably in every one of his net fan groups. Cinder had never imagined that she might share the admiration. In fact, she'd always thought Peony's celebrity crush was a bit silly, a bit pre-adolescent. Prince Kai this, Prince Kai that, an impossible fantasy. But now, something in Cinder's face must have said enough, because Peony suddenly shrieked and lunged at her, wrapping her arms around Cinder's waist and hopping up and down. I knew it. I knew you liked him too. I can't believe you actually met him. It's not fair. Did I mention how much I hate you? Yes, I know, said Cinder, prying Peony's arms off her. Now go be giddy somewhere else. I'm trying to work. Peony made a face and skipped away, twirling amid the piles of junk. What else? Tell me everything. What did he say? What did he do? Nothing, said Cinder. He just asked me to fix his android. She peeled away the spider webs from what had once been the hover's solar generator, but was now little more than a plastic shell. A cloud of dust kicked up into her face, and she pulled away, coughing. Ratchet? Eco plucked the ratchet from her torso and handed it to Cinder. What kind of android is it? Asked Peony. An old one. Tutor 8.6, said Eco. Older than me, and he said he would come up to the market next weekend to pick it up. Peony kicked a rusted oil can out of the path before bending over the engine. The news said the market's going to be shut down next week because of an outbreak. Oh, I hadn't heard that. Cinder wiped her hands on her pants, peering down into the engine's lower compartment. I guess we'll have to drop it off at the palace then. Yes, Peony jigged in place. We'll go together and you can introduce me and... Aha, Cinder beamed. Magbelt. Peony cupped her cheek in her palm, raising her voice. And then he'll recognize me at the ball, and I'll dance with him, and Crow will be livid. She laughed as if angering her older sister were life's greatest accomplishment. If the android's even done before the ball, Cinder selected a wrench from the tool belt around her hips. She didn't want to inform Peony that Prince Kai probably wouldn't be the one signing for deliveries at the palace. Peony whisked her hand through the air. When or whatever. Or whenever. I want to go to the ball, said Eco, gazing up at the horizon. It's prejudice not to let androids attend. Petition the government, then. I'm sure Peony will be happy to take your cause directly to the prince himself. Cinder clamped onto Eco's spherical head and forced her to aim the light back onto the hood. Now hold still. I've just about got this end detached. Cinder stuck the wrench to Eco, then pried the mag belt from its bracket, letting it clatter to the ground below. One side down, one to go. She led the way around the hover, clearing a path through the garbage so that Eco's treads wouldn't get stuck. Peony followed her and climbed on top of the hover's trunk, folding her legs beneath her. You know, some people are saying he's going to be looking for a bride at the ball. A bride, said Eco. How romantic. Cinder lowered herself onto her side behind the hover's back bumper and took a small flashlight from her tool belt. Hand me that wrench again. Didn't you hear me? A bride, Cinder. As in a princess. As in it's not going to happen. He's only 19. Tucking the flashlight between her teeth, Cinder took the wrench from Eco. The bolts in the back had less rust on them, better protected from the overhanging trunk, and took only a few quick turns to loosen. 18 and a half, said Peony. And it's true, all the gossip links are saying so. Cinder grunted. I would marry Prince Kai in a heartbeat. Me too, said Eco. Cinder spit out the flashlight and shuffled to the fourth corner. You and every other girl in the Commonwealth. Like you wouldn't, said Peony. Cinder didn't answer as she loosened the final bolt gripping the mag belt. It released and fell to the ground with a clang. There we go. She slid out from beneath the car and tucked the wrench and flashlight into her calf compartment before standing. See any other hovers worth scavenging while we're here? Pulling the mag belt out from beneath the hover, she pulled it at its hinges, forming a less cumbersome metal rod. I did see something over there. Eco switched the light around the stacks, not sure what model. Great, lead the way. Cinder nudged the android with the belt. Eco took off, muttering about being stuck in junkyards while Adri was all clean and cozy at home. Besides, said Puny, hopping off the trunk, the rumor that he's looking for a bride at the ball is a lot better than what the other rumors are saying. Let me guess, Prince Kai is actually a Martian? Or he had an illegitimate child with an escort, didn't he? Escort droids can't have children. Puny puffed, blowing a curl off her brow. Well, this is even worse. They say there's been talk of him marrying. She dropped her voice to a harsh whisper. Queen Lavana. Queen Cinder froze and clamped a gloved hand over her mouth, glancing around as if someone could be lurking in the pile of garbage, listening. She pulled her hand away, but kept her voice down. Honestly, Puny, those tablets are going to rot your brain. I don't want to believe it either, but they're all saying it. That's why the Queen's twitchy ambassador has been staying at the palace, so she can secure an alliance. It's all very political. I don't think so. Prince Kai would never marry her. You don't know that, but she did know. Cinder may not know much about intergalactic politics, but she knew Prince Kai would be a fool to marry Queen Lavana. The lingering moon caught Cinder's attention, and a shock of goosebumps covered her arms. The moon had always given her a sense of paranoia, like the people who lived there could be watching her, and if she stared for too long, she might draw their attention. Superstitious nonsense, but then everything about Lunars was eerie and superstitious. Lunars were a society that had evolved from an Earth and Moon colony centuries ago, but they weren't human anymore. People said that Lunars could alter a person's brain, make you see things you couldn't see, feel things you shouldn't feel, do things you didn't want to do. Their unnatural power had made them a greedy and violent race, and Queen Lavana was the worst of all of them. They said she knew when people were talking about her even thousands of miles away, even down on Earth. They said she murdered her older sister, Queen Chaunery, so she could take the throne from her. They said that she'd had her own husband killed too, so she would be free to make a more advantageous match. She said that she had forced her stepdaughter to mutilate her own face because, at the sweet age of 13, she had become more beautiful than the jealous queen could stand. They said she'd killed her niece, her only threat to the throne. Princess Celine had been only 3 years old when a fire caught in her nursery, killing her and her nanny. Some conspiracy theorists thought the princess had survived and was still alive somewhere, waiting for the right time to reclaim her crown and end Lavana's rule of tyranny. But Cinder knew it was only just desperation that fueled these rumors. After all, they'd found traces of the child's flesh in the ashes. Here, Ika raised her hand and knocked a slab of metal jutting from the huge mound of junk, startling Cinder. She shoved the thoughts aside. Prince Kai would never marry that witch. He could never marry a Lunar. Cinder pushed a few rusted aerosol cans and an old mattress aside before she was able to clearly make out the hover's nose. Good eye. Together they shuffled enough junk out of the way so that the full front of the vehicle could be seen. I've never seen one like this, Cinder said, running a hand over the pitted chrome insignia. It's hideous, said Puny with a sneer. What an awful color. It must be really old. Cinder found the latch and pulled open the hood. She drew back, blinking at the mess of metal and plastic that greeted her. Really old. She squinted into the front corner of the engine, but the undercarriage hid the mag belt clamps from view. Point the light over there, would you? Cinder lowered herself to the dirt. She tightened her ponytail before squirming under the hover, shoving aside the jumble of old parts that had been left to rest in the weeds beneath it. Stars, she muttered when she was able to look into its belly. Eco's light filtered down from above, through cables and wires, ducts and manifolds, nuts and bolts. This thing is ancient. It isn't a junkyard, said Puny. I'm serious, I've never seen anything like it. Cinder ran a hand along a rubber cable. The light flashed back and forth as Eco's sensor scanned the engine from above. Any useful parts? Good question. Cinder's vision tinted blue as she connected to her link. Could you read me the VIN by the windshield? She searched the number as Puny read it to her and had the hover's blueprint downloaded in minutes, the display creating an overlaid image on top of the engine above her. Seems to be fairly intact, she murmured, running her fingertips along the cluster of wires on her head. She followed them with her eyes, tilting her gaze to trace the path from hoses to pulleys to axles, trying to decipher how it all fit together, how it all worked. This is so cool. I'm bored, said Puny. Sighing, Cinder reached for the mag belt on the blueprint, but a green error message flashed in her vision. She tried just magnet, and then just belt, finally revealing a hit. The blueprint lit up a rubber band wrapped around a series of gears, encapsulated by a metal cover, something called a timing belt. Frowning, Cinder reached up and felt for the bolts and lock washers that attached the cover to the engine. She thought timing belts hadn't been used since internal combustion had become obsolete. Gasping, she craned her head to the side. In the deep shadows beneath the vehicle, she could make out something round. Beside her, connected to the bars overhead, a wheel. It's not a hover, it's a car. A gasoline car. Seriously? Said Puny. I thought real cars were supposed to be, I don't know, classy? Indignation flared in Cinder's chest. It has character, she said, feeling for the tire's treads. So, said Eco a second later, does this mean we can't use any of its parts? Ignoring her, Cinder hungrily scanned the blueprint before her. Oil pan, fuel injectors, exhaust pipes. It's from the second era. Fascinating. Not, said Puny. She suddenly screeched, launching herself back from the car. Cinder startled so fast she whapped her head on the front suspension. What? A rat just came out of the window. A big, fat, hairy one. Oh, gross. Groaning, Cinder settled her head back into the dirt, massaging her forehead. That made 2 head injuries in one day. At that rate, she's going to have to buy a new control panel, too. It must have been nesting in the upholstery. We probably scared it. We scared it? Puny's voice carried a shudder with it. Can we go now, please? Cinder sighed. Fine. Dismissing the blueprint, she squirmed out from beneath the car, accepting Eco's offered grippers to stand. I thought all the surviving gasoline cars were in museums, she said, brushing the cobwebs from her hair. I'm not sure I would label it a survivor, said Eco, her sensor darkening with disgust. It looks more like a rotting pumpkin. Cinder shut the hood with a bang, sending an oppressive dust cloud over the android. What was that about having a fantastic imagination? With some attention and good cleaning, it could be restored to its former glory. She caressed the hood. The car's dome-shaped body was a yellow-orange shade. Lost my place. Yellow-orange shade that looked sickly under Eco's light. A color that no one in modern times would choose. But with the ancient style of the vehicle, it bordered on charming. Rust was creeping up from the hollow beneath the shattered headlights, arcing along the dented fender. On one of the back windows was missing, but the seats were intact. The steering wheel and the dash seemed to have suffered only minor damage over the years. Maybe it could be our escape car. Peony peered into the passenger side window. Escape from what? Adri, New Beijing. We could get out of the Commonwealth altogether. We could go to Europe. Cinder rounded the driver's side and scrubbed the dirt off the window with her glove. On the floor side, 3 pedals winked up at her. Though hovers were all controlled by computers, she had read enough about old technology to know what a clutch was and even had a basic idea of how to operate one. This hunk of metal wouldn't get us to the city limits, said Puny. Stepping back, Cinder dusted off her hands. They were probably right. Maybe this wasn't a fantasy vehicle. Maybe it wasn't their key to salvation. But somehow, someday, she would leave New Beijing. She would find a place where no one knew who she was or what she was. Plus, we couldn't afford the gasoline, continued Eco. We could trade in your new foot and still not be able to afford enough fuel to get out of here. Plus, the pollution fines. Plus, I'm not getting in this thing. There's probably decades worth of rat droppings under those seats. Puny cringed. Ew. Cinder laughed. All right, I get it. I won't make you guys push the car home. Phew, you have me worried, said Puny. She smiled because she hadn't really been worried and flipped her hair off her shoulder. Cinder's eye caught on something, a dark spot below Puny's collarbone, visible just above the collar of her shirt. Hold still, she said, reaching forward. Puny did the opposite, panicking and swiping at phantoms on her chest. What was it? A bug? A spider? I said hold still. Cinder grabbed Puny by the wrist, swiped at the spot, and froze. Dropping Puny's arm, she stumbled back. What? What is it? Peony tugged on her shirt, trying to see, but then spotted another spot on the back of her hand. She looked up at Cinder, blood draining from her face. "A rash?" she said. "From the car?" Cinder gulped and neared her with hesitant footsteps, holding her breath. She reached again for Peony's collarbone and pulled the fabric of her shirt down, revealing the entire spot in the moonlight. A splotch of red, rimmed with bruised purple. Her fingers trembled. She pulled away, meeting Peony's gaze. Peony screamed. Chapter 5. Peony's shrieks filled the junkyard, seeping into the cracks of broken machinery and outdated computers. Cinder's auditory interface couldn't protect her from the shrill memory, even as Peony's voice cracked and she dissolved into hysteria. Cinder stood trembling, unable to move, wanting to comfort Peony, wanting to run away. How was this possible? Peony was young, healthy. She couldn't be sick. Peony cried, brushing her repeatedly at her skin, the spots. Cinder's netlink took over, as it did in moments when she couldn't think for herself. Searching, connecting, feeding information to her she didn't want. Leishmaniasis, the blue fever, worldwide pandemic, hundreds of thousands dead, unknown cause, unknown cure. Peony, she tentatively reached forward, but Peony stumbled back, swiping at her wet cheeks and nose. "Don't come near me, you'll get it. We'll all get it." Cinder retracted her hand. She heard Eco at her side, fan whirring. Saw the blue light darting over Peony around the junkyard, flickering. She was scared. "I said get back." Peony collapsed to her knees, hunched over her stomach. Cinder took 2 steps away, then lingered, watching Peony rock herself back and forth in Eco's spotlight. "I need to call an emergency hover. To come and take you away." Peony didn't respond. Her whole body was rattling. Cinder could hear her teeth chattering in between the wails. Cinder shivered. She rubbed her arms, inspecting them for spots. She couldn't see any, but she eyed her right glove with distrust, not wanting to remove it or check. She stepped back again. The junkyard shadows loomed toward her. The plague. It was here, in the air, in the garbage. How long did it take for the first symptoms of the plague to show up? Or, she thought of Chang Sasha at the market, the terrified mob running from her booth, the blare of the sirens. Her stomach plummeted. Was this her fault? Had she brought the plague home from the market? She checked her own arms again, swiping at invisible bugs that crawled over her skin. Stumbled back. Peony's sobs filled her head, suffocating her. A red warning flashed across her retina display, informing her that she was experiencing elevated levels of adrenaline. She blinked it away, then called up to her comlink with a writhing gut and sent a simple message before she could question it. "Emergency. In the junkyard. Leishmaniasis." She clenched her jaw, feeling the painful dryness of her eyes. A throbbing headache told her that she should be crying, that her sobs should match her sister's. "Why?" Peony asked, her voice stammering. "What did I do?" "You didn't do anything," Cinder said. "This isn't your fault." "But it might be mine." "What should I do?" Eco asked, almost too quiet to be heard. "I don't know," said Cinder. "A hover is on its way." Peony rubbed her nose with her forearm. Her eyes were rimmed with red. "You need to go. You'll catch it." Feeling dizzy, Cinder realized she'd been breathing too shallowly. She took another step away before filling her lungs. "Maybe I already have it. Maybe it's my fault you caught it. The outbreak at the market today. I didn't think I was close enough. But, Peony, I'm so sorry." Peony squeezed her eyes and buried her face again. Her brown hair was a mess of tangles hanging across her shoulders, stark against her pale skin. A hiccup followed by another sob. "I don't want to go." "I know." It was all Cinder could think to say. "Don't be scared. It will be all right." She couldn't lie, not when it was so obvious. I wish there was something." She stopped herself. "I'm so sorry." Peony swiped at her nose with her sleeve, leaving a trail of mucus, then kept crying. She didn't respond until the wails of the sirens had reached her ears and her head snapped up. She stared into the distance, the entrance of the junkyard somewhere beyond the trash heaps. Eyes rounded, lips trembling, face blotchy red. Cinder's heart shriveled in on itself. She couldn't help herself. If she was going to catch it, she already had. She fell to her knees, wrapping Peony up in both arms. Her tool belt dug into her hip, but she ignored it as Peony grasped at her t-shirt, sobs renewed. "I'm so sorry. What will you tell Mom and Pearl?" Cinder bit her lips. "I don't know." "Then, the truth, I guess." Bile rose in her throat. Maybe it was a sign. Maybe stomach sickness was a symptom. She looked down at her forearm, embracing Peony to her. Still no spots. Peony shoved her away, scooting back in the dirt. Stay away, you might not be sick yet. But they would take you. You have to get out of here. Cinder hesitated. She heard the crunch of treads over scattered aluminum and plastic. She didn't want to leave Peony, but what if she really hadn't caught it yet? She sat back on her heels, then clambered to her feet. Yellow lights were nearing them from the shadows. Cinder's right hand was sweating in its glove. Her breathing had shallowed again. Peony, go away. Cinder stepped back, had the weary sense to stop and pick up the folded mag belt. She moved toward the exit, her human leg as numb as the prosthesis. Puny sobs chased after her. 3 white androids met her around a corner. They had yellow sensors and red crosses painted on their heads, and 2 were pushing a hovering gurney between them. Are you the letumosis victim? One asked in a neutral voice, holding up an ID scanner. Cinder hid her wrist. No, my sister, Puny. She's that way to the left. The Metroids with the gurney wheeled away from her down the path. Have you had direct contact with the victim in the past 12 hours? The remaining android asked. Cinder opened her mouth, hesitated. Guilt and fear curdled in her gut. She could lie. There was no proof she had it yet, but if they took her to quarantines, she didn't stand a chance. She could barely hear her own voice. Yes. Are you showing symptoms? No. I don't know. I feel lightheaded, but not. She stopped herself. The Metroid neared her, its treads grating on the dirty ground. Cinder stumbled away from it, but it said nothing, only inched closer until Cinder's capsule pressed against a rotting storage crate. It held up the ID scanner in one prompt hand, and then a third arm appeared from beneath its torso, a syringe in place of grippers. Cinder shuddered but didn't resist as it grabbed her right wrist and inserted the needle. She flinched, watching as dark liquid, almost black in the android's yellow light, was pulled up into the syringe. She was not afraid of needles, but the world began to tilt. The android removed it just in time for her to slump down on the crate. What are you doing? She whispered, initiating blood scan for letumosis-carrying pathogens. Cinder heard a motor start up inside the android, faint beeps announcing each step. The android's light dimmed as its power source was diverted. She held her breath until her control panel kicked in and forced her lungs to contract. ID, said the android, holding the scanner out to her. A red light passed over her wrist and the scanner beeped. The android stashed it away in its hollow torso. She wondered how long it would take for it to finish the scan and determined that she was a carrier, confirming that she was at fault for everything. The sound of treads approached along the path. Cinder turned her head as the 2 androids appeared with Puny atop their gurney. She was sitting up with her hands wrapped around her knees. Swollen eyes wildly darted around the junkyard as if searching for an escape, as if she'd stumbled into a nightmare. But she didn't try to run. No one ever put up a fight when being taken to the quarantines. Their eyes met. Cinder opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She tried to plead forgiveness with her eyes. The faintest of smiles touched Puny's lips. She raised a hand and waved only with her fingers. Cinder returned it, knowing it should be her. She had already outlived her fate once. She should be the one being carted away. She should be the one dying. It should be her. It was about to be her. She tried to speak, to tell Puny that she would be right behind her. She wouldn't be alone. But then the android beeped. Scan complete. No letumosis-carrying pathogens detected. Subject is urged to stand 50 feet back from infected patient. Cinder blinked. Relief and dread both squirmed inside her. She wasn't sick. She wasn't going to die. She also wasn't going with Puny. We will alert you via comm when Puny enters the subsequent stages of the disease. Thank you for your cooperation. Cinder wrapped her arms around herself and watched Puny lay down as she was carted away, curling up like a child on the ground.